Welcome to Kansas Ag Report. I'm Ken Rogers. On this week's program, it's our monthly conversation with Dr. Roger McEowen from the Washburn School of Law. We'll also have features from the Kansas Soybean Commission, Kansas Department of Agriculture, and Kansas Grain Sorghum, along with a weekly update from the Kansas Livestock Association and market information from Pinion.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Soybean Commission. The Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers. Kansas Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farm and ranch families since 1919, kfb.org. And the Kansas Wheat Commission, lending in the adoption of profitable innovations from wheat, online at kswheat.com.
In agricultural news, Kansas Big First District Congressman and Chairman of the House Ag Committee, the Subcommittee on Livestock, Dairy, and Poultry, Tracy Mann, along with Representative Jim Costa of California, the ranking member of the House Ag Committee Subcommittee on Livestock, Dairy, and Poultry, along with Kansas Senator Jerry Moran, led 70 of their colleagues in penning a letter to Ag Secretary Vilsack, urging him to reverse USDA's decision to cancel or discontinue several National Ag Statistics Service reports. These reports provide American farmers, ranchers, and ag producers with transparent livestock, grain, and fiber market insights as they position themselves to effectively manage risk and build supply and demand estimates, which help them determine the commodity sourcing plans to remain in operation. This letter was supported by the National Grain and Feed Association, National Cattlemen's Beef Association, National Cotton Council, American Farm Bureau, Livestock Marketing Association, the Beef Alliance, Livestock Marketing and Dealers Association. And USDA says all ground beef samples that were sent to the National Veterinary Services Laboratory for PCR testing negative for the H5N1 bird flu virus. The USDA Food and Safety Inspection Service collected over 30 samples of ground beef from retail outlets in the states with dairy cattle herds that tested positive for the H5N1. The National Lab reported all samples tested negative for the virus. The Food and Drug Administration says preliminary results of testing of additional dairy products continue to show that pasteurization inactivates the bird flu virus. EPA has tested nearly 300 total retail samples of pasteurized dairy products. The results represent testing in 201 of those samples to date. The USDA Plant Animal Inspection Service recently added Colorado to the list of states that had a dairy herd infection as well. Our conversation with Roger McEowen for the Washburn School of Law when we return on the Kansas Ag Report.
The Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by Kansas Grain Sorghum, growers working together. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. grassandgrain.com.
And joining us for our monthly conversation, Dr. Roger McEowen from the Washburn School of Law. He is an ag and tax law specialist. Good morning, Dr. McEowen.
Good to be with you.
All right, let's get to it. Lots of things to talk about, and with agriculture going through our judicial system. And let's start off right away with, co-tenants. And sometimes folks want to do what they believe is best for their heirs when it comes to land. And if you have a bunch of them, it seems like everybody always has a different idea of what to do with that land.
Yeah, that's particularly the case, Ken, if you have some children that are what we call off-farm heirs, and maybe one is an on-farm heir, or multiple ones are on-farm heirs that have the idea that they're going to continue the farming operation into the next generation. If you have that type of situation, probably one of the worst things that you can do is leave the farmland outright to all of the kids in co-equal undivided interest. because you're right. There are those that aren't going to farm that would view that as a dead asset and they want to cash it out. And so they want to get their money out of that portion. And that could eventually lead to the breakup of the farm. And it's very difficult for a court to be able to partition the property equally. And so they'll just order it sold and have the parties split the proceeds. Well, that kind of defeats the parents' purpose if the purpose was to keep the farm operating as a viable operation into subsequent generations. So there's better things to do than leave it in co-equal undivided interest to multiple children.
And another situation that could say you have that situation, and say maybe you have three heirs, and one likes the operator, but one doesn't, and one
Yeah.
doesn't care.
Yeah, and actually, you're referring to a recent case that occurred in the state of Iowa, and we've had these cases elsewhere across the country too. One of the co-equal owners, as the children, wants to terminate an existing farm tenant, but say the others don't want to. And in that case, there were three that didn't want to. They were all daughters that inherited the farm, and the one daughter wanted to terminate the tenant, served notice of termination on him in accordance with Iowa law. And he said, well, that's not valid because you didn't get the consent of the other co-tenants. And that's really how the court came out. It's more complicated than that. But basically, they said that a 25% owner can't unilaterally terminate the tenant. And then in an Illinois case, a trust that didn't have majority interest in the ownership of the land involved. There were two trusts involved. The way the property devolved from the parents' estates, that trust wanted to develop the minerals, the subsurface estate. And they can't do that without the consent of the other co-tenant in that situation, and invoked another statutory procedure in Illinois. So we get into these unique issues in multiple areas with respect to co-equal undivided interest. It's just best to come up with a different plan.
And before we go to our first break, let's talk about Swamp Buster, which we have talked about a number of times in our conversations, another constitutional challenge.
Yeah, this time we do have a constitutional challenge to the Swamp Buster program. This is not something that the U.S. Supreme Court has ever ruled on with respect to Swamp Buster. We did have a constitutional challenge against the program that was made in the Seventh Circuit about 20 years ago. And the court said it was constitutional under the spending clause of the Constitution. The challenge was made to Swamp Buster under the Commerce Clause, saying that, well, this puddle in this farm field doesn't have any connection with interstate commerce. And so Swamp Buster program is unconstitutional because there's no interstate connection. And the government said that, well, our argument is that it is constitutional under the spending clause of the Constitution. And basically, that is going to negate the Commerce Clause unless the provisions associated with the program are coercive. In other words, you have to participate in Swamp Buster to be profitable in farming. And that is going to be a very difficult argument for the plaintiffs in this case, and again in Iowa, to overcome, because I would anticipate while they have made a Commerce Clause challenge, the reply brief, which this case just got filed, haven't seen the reply brief yet, but my guess is the reply brief is going to say, well, that may be so, but it is valid under the spending clause of the Constitution. So we shall see. It's a frontal assault to the Swamp Buster program.
We're talking with Dr. Roger McEowen from the Washburn School of Law. He is an ag and tax law specialist and joins us every month with some of the latest things going on in agriculture throughout our court systems. We'll take a break. Back with more in just a moment.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Livestock Association, supporting members' business interests and meeting consumer demands. KLA.org. Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. And Kansas Corn, building the future at kansascorn.com.
And our guest is Dr. Roger McEowen for the Washburn School of Law, an ag and tax law specialist. And as we talk about what's going on throughout the court system, Dr. McEowen, a couple of things. It seems like there's always something going on when it comes to takings cases. You have a couple different ones you want to highlight.
Yeah, we've actually had two key takings opinions by the U.S. Supreme Court in the month of April, and these were unanimous opinions, which is unusual on basically just about anything the Supreme Court does. We don't get very many unanimous opinions, but we had two of them here. And the first one involved a case I think we mentioned a month or two ago. And this is the DeVilliers case out of South Texas, down along the Gulf. And this farmer and his family, actually, his ancestors had farmed this land for about a century, well over a century. And there became problems with flooding when the state of Texas came in and redid a road project. And it basically created a retention pond out of his farm, and it flooded him out and destroyed his livestock operation as well as his crop operation. So he sued the state for a taking, and the state said, well, there's no mechanism in the statute to allow you to sue us for taking. You can't do that. So the case got removed to federal court. And the question was whether the specific question was whether the takings clause is what we call self-executing. Is there some type of mechanism that you can use to sue to get the compensation that you're entitled to if there indeed is a taking, which is what the Fifth Amendment says. The government can take your property, but they have to pay you for it. And he lost in the federal court, but the U.S. Supreme Court unanimously said that this case can proceed under state law. You can file an inverse condemnation action. So they're going to allow the complaint to be redone, but it's going to be in federal court. So it's an interesting case. The Supreme Court didn't say the Fifth Amendment is self-executing. I wish they would have. That would have made it easier. But I think at the end of the day, he will end up prevailing in this case. But it does continue. He gets his day in court to establish that the state owes him money for wrecking his farm.
Now you have another ruling that is almost just the opposite. I mean, the government wanted to say, hey, you pay us for a favorable ruling.
Yeah. This was a fellow out in California that had a lot, and he wanted to put a manufactured home on the lot, about 1,800 square foot home. So just a modest home. And the county in Placerville, California, this is out near San Francisco, between San Francisco and Tahoe, is where this is at. And the county said, well, sure, we'll give you a building permit if you pay us $24,000 as a traffic impact mitigation fee. And he said, no, I think that's unconstitutional. And so this gets to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, based on a trilogy of cases that they previously decided, that the burden of that $24,000 fee is not closely related to the benefit of course, having his home and mitigating traffic. And so they said that's unconstitutional. You have to have some reasonable connection between the amount of the fee and what the traffic impact would be. And they said that's not the case. So that's an important one for not only homeowners, but all property owners, including farmers and ranchers. What can the local government do to extract something out of you financially to give you a right to develop your property? And again, the benefits and burdens have to be basically roughly proportional is the basic language that the court used, and this was not.
Okay. Well, Dr. McEowen, lots of things going on throughout the system right now. How can folks learn more about things maybe we didn't get to in this short conversation of what's happening?
Well, articles on this are posted on my website or the blog, my blog that you can access through my website, and that's washburnlaw.edu/WALTR. Also on the Ag Manager website through the Department of Ag Econ at K-State.
All right, Dr. McEowen, as always, appreciate it, and we'll talk with you next month.
Thank you, Ken.
Dr. Roger McEowen for the Washburn School of Law. He is an ag and tax law specialist. We will take a break and be back with more in just a moment.
Anything I can help you locate today?
Yeah, I'm looking for some grass seed, but I can never figure out which type to buy.
At Premier Farm and Home, you can pick your grass seed out of a field instead of off a shelf.
Really? You can do that?
At Premier, you can.
That'd be great.
Let me take you to our plots.
Everyone has lawn problems. At Premier Farm and Home, we see it as an opportunity to earn your trust.
This is so helpful.
Only place in the Midwest.
With each problem we help you solve, you'll gain confidence and find that no one can take care of your lawn like you can.
It's now time for the Kansas Grain Sorghum Update, brought to you by the Kansas Grain Sorghum Commission. Sorghum leaders are just returning from the Sorghum Improvement Conference of North America. Known as SICNA, this conference was hosted in Oklahoma City by entities such as the Center for Sorghum Improvement and the United Sorghum Checkoff Program. This event provides an opportunity for farmers to connect with public and private researchers. Attendees heard from student presenters covering various topics and even industry leader-led panels discussing the latest innovations in sorghum research. The USDA has recently announced the Prospective Plantings Report for 2024. The USDA estimates sorghum growers across the nation could plant 6.4 million acres in 2024, down 11% from last year. In Kansas, growers will plant 3.35 million acres, down 7% from 2023. We'll have more numbers when the USDA's acreage report is published in late June. The Kansas Grain Sorghum Commission would not be complete without its hardworking board members. The Kansas Department of Agriculture has announced the results of the Grain Commodity Commission elections. John Burning, Scott County, was reelected to his District 2 seat, and Brant Peterson of Stanton County was reelected to his District 3 position. Along with John and Brant, we applaud our commissioners for their efforts to better our organization. Next year's commission election cycle will take place in the Eastern Kansas tier of crop reporting districts 7, 8, and 9. Thank you, and stay tuned for next time.
Grain sorghum is one of the most important cereal crops worldwide, and Kansas leads the nation in its production. Over the years, sorghum has been either exported, used in animal feed domestically, or for other industrial uses. Recently, its use in the ethanol market has seen tremendous growth, with 30% of domestic sorghum typically going to ethanol production. Kansas Grain Sorghum is committed to sorghum research, market development, and education. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org.
Imagine turning soybean oil, used cooking oils, and waste animal fats into fuel so amazing it drives U.S. jobs and our economy forward. Learn more about biodiesel at americasadvancedbiofuel.com.
Planters are rolling. What can soybean growers expect for 2024? The National Agricultural Statistics Service expects soybean acreage in Kansas to reach 4.25 million acres for the year, a decrease of about 4% from 2023. NASS anticipates a total soybean crop value of $1.32 billion, significantly decreased from the previous marketing year, projects an average $12.60 per bushel, down $1.70 from the previous marketing year. Price impacts mean the on-farm grain stocks of 23.5 million bushels are up 57% from this time last year. Already in 2024, weather maps from USDA indicate abnormally dry conditions unfolding over the spring, but project lessening of drought conditions as the year progresses. Outside of price and weather outlooks for the year, growers should be giving thought to their crop management plans for 2024. Growers have a valuable resource in the K-State Research and Extension and K-State Agronomy Services. KSRE's current Insect Pest Management Guide lists common pests and peak environmental conditions for infestation and offers guidance for insecticides in the marketplace. The updated Chemical Weed Control Guide walks growers through proper use of available chemistries as well as critical characteristics about herbicide products. The Herbicides for Soybeans section grades various herbicides on their ability to manage key weeds and provides tips for and limitations of the products. Both guides are available through the KSRE bookstore as digital PDFs or requested print copies. K-State agronomic experts advise growers to consider how high winds and wind erosion can impact off-target movement of herbicides, especially early in the crop season when fields may have low vegetative cover. Further guidance on herbicide use, resistance, and safety are available from the Take Action program at iwilltakeaction.com.
What does a brighter, more sustainable future look like in our cities and towns, and how do we get there? When New York needed an alternative fuel source to reduce carbon emissions, the city found what it needed in biodiesel made from U.S. soybean oil.
For the last 2 years, the Division of Animal Health team at the Kansas Department of Agriculture has been on alert to respond to the outbreak of highly pathogenic avian influenza, or HPAI, which has had a recent impact across the entire nation. Whether HPAI was affecting the poultry industry or more recently the dairy industry, the guidance about how to reduce risk and slow the spread has continued to emphasize the importance of biosecurity. What is biosecurity? It refers to everything people can do to keep diseases away from your birds, animals, and property. It includes structural practices like designing buildings, fencing, roads, and other infrastructure so that you can keep separation from your animals to limit their exposure to outside sources. This might mean designing a chicken coop that has a protected water source so wild birds can't share water with domestic birds, or it could be designating roads and parking for visitors to your farm that are away from animal areas. Biosecurity also includes operational practices like designated clothing and footwear only for use in animal pens, isolating new animals so that they aren't exposed to your herd, or cleaning and disinfecting all shared equipment before using it in your operation. And while we certainly emphasize biosecurity when there is an active threat like HPAI, we recommend you operate with good biosecurity every day and to make those practices your habit. KDA works with many ag businesses to help develop enhanced biosecurity plans called Secure Food Supply Plans, which can help provide continuity of business in case of a severe foreign animal disease outbreak. There are many resources available to provide more detailed guidance about biosecurity, some of which can be found on KDA's website at agriculture.ks.gov/HPAI. When we all work together to limit the risks of spreading disease from farm to farm, we're protecting agriculture here in Kansas and across the nation.
What if U.S. soybean meal were more than a commodity? If seed companies and the soybean checkoff built a better variety? That future is here. The time is now. To meet end-user demands, the soybean checkoff is investing in the compositional quality of soybeans, including meal. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Many seed companies claim to offer the latest genetics, but how many have tested those genetics in soils just like yours? The Oldie Seed Know to Grow research program has fully tested the latest seed genetics in soils that are right in your neighborhood. The Oldie Seed Know to Grow program can recommend the best performing hybrids from technologies like Enlist, Extend, and Liberty Link that will optimize the yield and profit of every acre on your farm. Contact Oldie Seed today.
Renowned for its expansive prairies, the state has nearly 44.8 million acres of agricultural ground. However, not all this land is suitable for growing crops. By utilizing the 14 million acres of pasture and rangeland that otherwise would go unused, many of the 22,000 Kansas ranchers can significantly increase the amount of high-quality protein grown for consumption. The Sunflower State ranks third in the United States for the number of cattle on ranches and in feed yards with 6.2 million head, which is more than twice the state's population. Kansas also ranks third in total red meat production, with beef representing more than 6 billion pounds of the total. In addition, the beef industry has a direct output of more than $11 billion to the state's economy, with the ranching and cattle feeding sectors employing nearly 20,000 Kansans, and the meat packing and prepared meat manufacturing industries employing 46,000. Please join the Kansas Livestock Association in celebrating Beef Month and the vital role this high-quality protein plays in bringing communities, friends, and families together, while also supporting the livelihoods of many across the state.
Kansas Corn reminds you that E15 fuel is the right choice for every kind of driver. For the car enthusiast, E15 has higher octane. For the thrifty driver, E15 is priced lower than regular unleaded. For the nature lover, E15 provides cleaner air. For the shopper who buys local, E15 has more ethanol from our Kansas corn farms. Choose E15 for a higher octane, lower price, cleaner American fuel. Message from the Kansas Corn Commission. Learn more at kscorn.com.
Good morning. This is Jacob Herzog with Pinion Risk Management. Now, here we are entering the time of the year that we're statistically the most likely, although obviously never guaranteed, to have some of the best opportunities in regards to marketing. The time of the year where the market will be pushed and pulled by seemingly every headline. Now, wheat has rallied drastically, led primarily by the French wheat futures contract. Domestically, soft red wheat areas honestly all look pretty darn good, and at this point, a bumper crop is to be expected. Now, the hard red wheat areas look either pretty rough to average. Obviously here the main story is in Russia and eastern Ukraine, continuing to be damaged by drought and freezing temperatures, with little relief in the forecast. Now, all this being said, mind us all, we're still looking at a very burdensome stocks number. Down south, in South America, continue to battle floods in the mostly harvested Rio Grande do Sul region, and traders continue to make bets as to how many beans may potentially be lost. Domestically, in the eastern Corn Belt, producers have been getting planted, albeit a little bit behind last year's progress. And, like every year, there are some areas getting a lot more rain than others. And there are pockets that have experienced top-end yield loss at this point. The last time we had a planting delay rally was 2019. And while yield for some was disappointing, overall yield was still pretty close to the January USDA estimate that year. And ever since then, traders have been pretty resistant to trade planting delay news. Now, like I said this time, this is where rubber meets the road. Now, it might be a little controversial for some, but in my opinion, following the details of every market story in an effort to divine market direction actually helps very little when it comes to marketing. What matters is that you have a plan, that you have a diversity of decision-making tools at your disposal, and that you've learned something new from last year. Now, if you would like to talk to somebody about a plan, you can reach us at 888-452-8751. I'm Jacob Herzog with Pinion Risk Management.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
That's our show this week. Be social with us online, kansasagreport.net, or our social media channels. We wish all mothers a happy Mother's Day weekend. Hope that you hear from all your kids.
Next time you see a beautiful field of corn, reach out and thank the farmers who work tirelessly to raise corn for livestock feed, renewable fuels, and exports to feed a growing world population. The farmers on the Kansas Corn Commission work for Kansas Corn, with grower-funded checkoff dollars that support foreign and domestic market development, research, promotion, and education to expand opportunities for Kansas farmers. To learn more, visit kscorn.com.
Many seed companies claim to offer the latest genetics, but how many have tested those genetics in soils just like yours? The Oldie Seed Know to Grow research program has fully tested the latest seed genetics in soils that are right in your neighborhood. The Oldie Seed Know to Grow program can recommend the best performing hybrids from technologies like Enlist, Extend, and Liberty Link that will optimize the yield and profit of every acre on your farm. Contact Oldie Seed today.